Well, hello there. It's the Linda and Charlie Bloom show, or Bloom Talks again. Welcome back. So, we're happy to be here on this day before Valentine's Day, which is a reminder to us that our relationships, not just a primary relationship, if we have one, are an important source of fulfillment and pleasure and joy in our lives. And so we encourage all of you to honor that in whatever way is appropriate for you. Today, we're going to honor it by talking about something that can get in the way, and for many couples does get in the way, particularly if they've been together for a while. And that is the phenomenon of boredom. It's something that at the early stages of a relationship is inconceivable to us, that we could ever get bored with this person who just fills us with pleasure and joy and fascination and excitement. And, we just can't imagine that we could ever look at them and say, oh, well, I guess this is what happens after you've been together for a while. And so that is one of the big challenges that we have to deal with if we experience boredom in a relationship. And that is to be aware of the possibility that we may have decided or have a belief that it's inevitable that after you're with the same person for a certain amount of time, boredom is going to happen. After all, kind of know each other, at least that's what we think, and we kind of get into these routines and patterns and habits, and it can be really problematic if you get into a state of resignation and just believe that, okay, I guess this is an inevitable stage in the relationship, and just have to accept the fact that things can't stay stimulating and alive and passionate forever, and I guess this is how it's going to be from now on. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how we can respond to those feelings if they come up. For some people, they don't ever come up, but for a lot of us, they do. And the problem isn't that they come up, but it's where we go with that, whether we go to it's inevitable, resignation, I'm resigned to this, there's nothing I can do about it, she's just boring, or this is how it goes, or whether we get responsible and acknowledge what we're experiencing and take a stand to make things different.
Yes, and I love Valentine's Day. And I love that we're doing this particular topic on Valentine's Eve, because one of the things that we've been doing for years on our wedding anniversary and Valentine's Day is taking time to take stock. How is our relationship? Is there anything left unsaid, unfinished business that needs to be addressed? Are there new commitments and new vows that we want to take to each other, and new agreements that we want to make that will keep the relationship on the growth path? And so this is really a wonderful time. Any time is a good time to do it. But the celebration of love season is an excellent time to take stock and to see if you've gotten into some ruts and some habits and some grooves that are keeping you from living fully, enjoying your relationship to the max. And so we want to give you some tips, and Charlie already gave you one of the really important ones. You have to believe that it's possible. Don't succumb to the idea that there's a ceiling on how vital and alive and enthusiastic you can be about your relationship, because of course we've been together for years, so what do you expect? You can't have that kind of romantic feeling and that in love feeling and that exhilaration that comes in the early years, and we're here to challenge that belief. If you do believe it and you succumb to that belief, it will hold down the level of vitality. If you believe it's possible, you'll start thinking about, what can I do? What can we collaborators do to bring the vitality to the relationship? So one of the things that is another tip, in addition to the belief, is tune into your own thinking, because a lot of people have a fantasy going of Prince Charming and Princess Charming. And if I really had Prince Charming, he'd know what I needed. He would love me well. He would pay attention. He would validate me. He would support me. He would say, yay, you're so wise, and all of these things. And some people are afraid to really look at their own fantasies, admit their own fantasies. And I think they rob themselves an opportunity to look at what the fantasy man and the fantasy woman represent. They represent some longings that we may be closeted about. There's the very same things that may have attracted us to our partner in the beginning, that they were solid, that they were count-onable, that they were sturdy, that they were predictable, and they provided security, may be the very things that we've outgrown, and we don't need that as much now. We always need it some, but we may have created such trust that we don't need as much as we used to. And the fantasy man and the fantasy woman may be that growing edge of what we want to add into the relationship, because it's too much of a good thing, all that comfort and security and predictability. Want to get out there on the skinny branches. Want to get out there on the edge. Want to get out there where there's a little bit risky, or a lot risky talk and behaviors, and trying new things. And it's a kind of a cultivated taste for that feeling a little scared, but mostly it's excitement of the adventure of something new.
Yeah, well, that can be scary.
Yeah.
Something new.
Yeah.
And what is familiar and what we're used to and what becomes more predictable feels more comfortable, and we can get into a rut, because relationships, like children, they need roots and wings. So the roots are the dependability, the count-on ability, the predictability that gives us a sense of security in the relationship. As we become more capable of providing some of those things for ourselves, then we don't necessarily feel as dependent upon the other person to give us some of those things. And so that can cause a shift in the relationship, which can be very enhancing to the relationship when we're both willing to take more responsibility for that. Sometimes there can be a fear that if we take the need out of this relationship, then there won't be any glue that's going to keep us together. So we want to kind of stay dependent upon each other for things that maybe are not good for the relationship to an excessive degree. So there's another thing that can really contribute to boredom, and that is when there are unresolved differences.
That's right.
That we have neglected to address out of the fear that we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to shake things up too much, we don't want to open up a can of worms, all those cliches that sort of can get in our way when we're really looking at how can we bring some spice and some juice back into our relationship. And you look at the question of, well, what happened to it? Often there can be a recognition that, well, we've been avoiding, or one or both of us have been avoiding acknowledging some grievances or some unfulfilled hopes or desires or some unfinished business that needs to be attended to, out of the fear or the concern that if we open that up, then things might get worse than, there are some things worse than boredom, and that is antagonism and hostility and anger and fighting. Although sometimes if we're willing to risk some of those things happening, then we can begin to address some of the things that are causing the boredom, which can be more dangerous even than volatility.
Mm-hmm. So I want to add to what you're saying, because I feel like it's really important that any unfinished business and any incompletions, that people grow the courage to have those kind of conversations, because that's one of the things that's a wet blanket over the zestiness of the relationship and contributes to the boredom.
Mm-hmm.
But here's another one. Sometimes it's not about the relationship so much. It's about we're bored with our life. It's the same old routine.
Yeah.
We may have outgrown the job that we're working in, and we feel like we're underemployed. Do you know that the routine is stultifying, that we are not really having a chance to give our gifts and to have creative expression? Sometimes putting the attention on ourselves and asking those questions. Are there ways I'm holding myself back? Are there ways I'm holding myself down? Are there ways that I as an individual have gotten into a rut? Are there longings that I have? A fantasy for my own personal life, not a fantasy of what you and I are going to share together, but things that I dreamed of that I was going to be living into at this point in my life. The learning that was going to go on, the adventures that I was going to have, the friends that were going to enrich my life. And sometimes that can be just the thing to rise up to a higher level of responsibility, and that when we feel we're living the life that we want to live, they start looking different to us. And they're inspired to live the life that they have been dreaming of, that they may have held back. Maybe.
Not necessarily.
They might be threatened by it.
That's why it feels like a risk.
It is a risk.
Because it is going to rattle the cage
it's going to
of
shake
the
it up.
relationship. And your partner will respond in whatever way they respond. And sometimes they'll be inspired by us getting out on the edge and taking some chances that we have been afraid to take in terms of enriching and invigorating our own lives. But sometimes they'll react by wanting to pull us back because it feels threatening.
That's right.
To shake things up that way. There's been a balance in the relationship that we've been comfortable with, but sometimes comfort can deteriorate into staleness and boredom because there's too much of it. Relationships require challenge and security. If there's too much challenge, there's anxiety and insecurity. If there's too much security, then there's not enough juice to really fuel the passion and invigorate things. So we've got to find that balance. And you don't just get to that place and kind of stay there. It's a dynamic. So it's constantly
always moving,
needing some adjustment.
Right.
Sometimes, we might need to, get out on skinny branches a little bit more ourselves or together. Sometimes what we might need to do is to rein in some of the chaos that could be going on in our lives and get more organized and more structured. But where we are responsible for creating and co-creating a workable dynamic balance in the relationship.
And to have those kinds of conversations starting with ourselves about the roots and the wings. Are we getting too root bound? Are we getting too pot bound when we need a bigger pot for our roots to grow? Are we concentrating too much on the roots, which is the comfort and security, and not enough on the wings, that we can fly, that we can be up in the trees, out on the skinny branches? And no matter what phase we are in and what adjustments we're putting in, one of the things that is such an essential ingredient is the appreciation and gratitude, the heartfelt, sincere, regular doses of appreciation and gratitude that we see our partner not through fault finding and critical eyes, but we see them through eyes that are seeing their beauty, seeing their signature strengths, speaking to their beauty and their signature strengths and how they enrich our lives. And this is enlivening in a relationship, because when we have mirrored back to us our wonderfulness, it gives us a little perk, do you know? And I think daily practice is not too much to be able to give and to open to receive from each other. And one of the things that we find repeatedly with the couples that we see in counseling and also students in our courses is that they don't understand how much validation, acknowledgement, appreciation, and gratitude we all need to thrive, and how that really stimulates and enlivens the relationship when we do that. And when we are sincere in that kind of acknowledgement, it makes room for the kind of risky talk that we're inviting you into about bringing some complaints, what's not working for me, the incompletions that are laying around, because they know that they're held with high regard, so they can hear that it's on their behalf, your behalf, and on behalf of the relationship to tweak it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. That we could really both benefit by living our life as if we are really alive, fully engaged, paying attention, not relating to them as they were some time ago. We may have put a snapshot in the album and not turned the page, and they've changed and we've changed, and we need to get up to date, and we need to be looking ahead to vision together about what it is that we want to be, the two of us manifesting and co-creating.
So if one of you, very often in relationships, there's one person who is on one end of the spectrum and
the security person is on the risk
other. Yeah.
Continuum.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways in which we can polarize each other, but yeah, that's one way. That one person is just more inclined to get out on the edge more. The other person is more security conscious, and so this can sometimes be a place of tension in the relationship if we don't show and experience appreciation for what that other person is bringing. It's really easy to demonize somebody who really think is an anchor that's weighting us down with their need for security, or to demonize somebody who's taking what we consider to be irresponsible chances and risks. But when we react that way and try to pull them back into being more like us, then we're automatically inevitably going to create resistance, and we're going to, find ourselves in a situation where there's a real possibility of not only tension but some real relationship difficulties.
Yeah.
So what we want to see if we can have a recognition of why it is that I brought somebody into this relationship who's so different from me. Why didn't I choose somebody who is more, who's like me on the security end of it.
Wouldn't that be
who's
easier?
Like me on the other side of it. Well, there's a reason why we did that. There's a reason why we didn't want to get involved in a committed partnership with somebody who's very much like us,
Mm-hmm.
because that would not enable us to develop ourselves, to grow, to expand our comfort zone, in ways that we could experience life more fully, in which we could experience more of ourselves, to own and to really take responsibility for that aspect of myself that I haven't really been in touch with, that my partner brings into my life.
Mm-hmm. So related to what you're saying, there's another continuum, and people can fall at any place along this continuum about paying attention to what the relationship needs to thrive. And sometimes there's one in the pair who's very keenly aware and sensitively tuned into what the relationship needs to be vital and thrive. And the other person can get a little complacent and leave it up. It's not always the woman, by the way. It's often the woman, but it's not always the woman. But there is often one person who tunes into what the relationship needs and is proactive about bringing up the conversations that need to be had. Maybe they're proactive about the acknowledgement. Maybe they're proactive about dreaming up some new things to experience, some adventures, some trips, some romantic getaways, whatever it is. If you know that you're the one that's kind of been soft pedaling it and not really proactive, it's a tremendous gift to your partner to share that responsibility with them. That could be the most dazzling Valentine's gift that you could give them, way better than the candy and the flowers, is to really let them know how much you appreciate how much responsibility they've carried for the well-being of the relationship and keeping it juicy, and that you want to do that too. And come forward with your ideas and invite them in. Give them a multiple choice list and let them choose what it is that would really light them up.
There's so much in life that we do not have control over. You might have noticed that we think we do, we think we should, we want to, but we don't. And one of the things that we don't have control over is how other people choose to relate to us. But there's a big difference between having control and having influence. And we can influence the way other people choose to relate to us by relating to them in ways that are the way we would like them to relate to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we also have control over where we put our attention. And if we choose to put our attention on grievances that we haven't dealt with, or things that we can't change about our partner, and kind of promote a feeling of disappointment or resentment or grievance about how they're not fulfilling us in the way we want them to, then we're going to create an experience of dissatisfaction by putting our attention there. There's never any shortage for most of us of things about the other person that we wish were different, or that we feel disappointed with, or that don't fit our strongest desires. So that's never a problem. I mean, if you want to focus on that stuff, you can. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging it, as long as you're willing to deal with it in a responsible way. And as long as you're willing to take some actions or communicate things that might help them to become aware of how you would like things to be different, and to do that in a way that isn't condemning or punitive or judgmental towards that person. we have the power to determine whether we choose at any given time to focus on what we're disappointed with, or what we feel grateful about, or what we feel appreciative of with our partner. Which is not to say that you just sweep things under the rug and pretend that everything is perfect, but it does mean that you don't indulge in feelings, that you don't wallow and kind of stew in feelings of resentment or disappointment that your partner has no awareness of, because it will affect the way you feel towards them by attaching your attention to those things.
Okay, so I have some closing remarks to make about this topic. Number one, I would like to acknowledge you for sharing responsibility for keeping our relationship very alive. I'm fascinated and excited, and we've got 50 years plus, so I feel if we can do it, other people can do it. Thank you for doing some of the heavy lifting to keep it vital. And what I want to say,
welcome.
You're welcome. And what I want to say to the listening audience is, don't settle. If you're bored, tell the truth about it and take responsibility for goosing that relationship along its path. Dream up some things, invite your partner in. Don't be in the holding pattern. Don't settle for less than is available. What is available in committed partnerships has a gold mine if we dig for it. And this boredom can really rob us of feeling life is good. And I want to just grab it by the butt, and get the most out of this life while I can. I want to grab it by the butt, and I want to get the most out of this relationship that I can. So to be proactive rather than in the disempowered, waiting for the other person to do it or for something to fall out of the sky on us. It's up to us to create the relationship that we want to have.
I like that metaphor, grab life by the butt. I had never heard it before, but I did hear something like it in one of my favorite movies, Big Night.
Yeah.
When the restaurant owner is talking to another restaurant owner who's asking him, how did you get to be so successful? And he says, you got to take a bite out of the ass of life. Never forgot that line.
That's good.
Get out there and take a bite out of the ass of life.
And next week's topic is lost your mojo? What do we do when we lose our mojo? So happy Valentine's. Have a heartfelt Valentine's. Go for the gold, and we'll see you next week.